The Newton Fund enables researchers around the world to find lasting solutions to global challenges. Let's take a look at some of its achievements.
We work with the local communities to characterize the local species of plants and fungi that they were using, but also to share our knowledge about the species, how perhaps they could utilize these resources in a more effective way.
We have impacted the careers of several hundred women in a very positive way. I have given them not just the basic training, but also the confidence to take up these roles.
Those who do scientific management, administration, or policy or journalism, they are much more visible. And that visibility also has given them more confidence, not only for these women and many other girl students who are pursuing science. They're also looking at them as role models.
Here in South Africa, the Newton Fund is delivered through the British Council. Today, we're celebrating 8 years of innovation and research that have been initiated by the fund. Joining me are some special guests to tell us about the Newton Fund. The National Research Foundation is part of a core group of partners for the Newton Fund in South Africa. We have Nelson Gomane, who is a professional officer for human and infrastructure capacity development at the NRF, to speak about the fund's role in research development. We also have Sem Rametsi, who manages science projects at the British Council, and also two beneficiaries, Lupiwe Mduzana from the Walter Sisulu University and Dr. Neo Bule from the University of the Free State. They will bring to life the impact of the fund on their research. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are joining us live, have any of you benefited from the Newton Fund? Can you contribute to the discussion? Tell us how by posting your messages here in the chat or send us an email after the event. Before we get going with our discussion, let's take a listen to Marta Tedros. She is the lead on the British Council's Research and Innovation Global Programs in London.
At the British Council, we work with partner organizations to co-design and co-deliver projects addressing research capacity gaps and aligning with national priorities for research and innovation. We focused on research capacity strengthening, and we provided seed funding to support the early stage collaboration between early career researchers and their institutions, providing them an opportunity to work together and to exchange knowledge and good practices. The Newton Fund has delivered research and innovation activities worth over £585 million across 18 countries since 2014. The fund has fostered partnerships involving over 2,000 overseas partners in over 5,400 projects and generated over 5,000 research publications. To the researchers in South Africa and their institutions, thank you for the talent, innovation, and commitment you invested over the last 8 years. May your work and partnerships continue to flourish in the future, tackling today's and tomorrow's challenges while embracing opportunities to learn from each other.
Science, technology, and innovation are fundamental for our social, economic, and environmental progress here in South Africa. Let's hear about how the Newton Fund supports partnerships to tackle development challenges in our country. Nelson, let's kick off the conversation with you. You have the National Research Foundation, which works towards building bridges between research communities. Let's talk a little bit about the South African Research Chairs Initiative and the kind of impact it has on the mandate for the National Research Foundation.
The South African Research Chairs Initiative, it's a strategic intervention of government, and it aims at building research capacity through knowledge development. And also, the focus is largely towards attracting established researchers. And these established researchers are important, particularly at the level of your academic institutions, higher education institutions, in that they assume a role of training and mentoring our postgraduate students, most of whom are funded through the NRF.
Sam, let me come to you. Building on what he's just said, you have South Africa and the United Kingdom having established the UK-South Africa bilateral research chairs program. So let's talk about how this works. I understand it's implemented through the British Council, but also give us a little bit more background on it.
So I think the Newton Fund, through the British Council, recognized the research chairs as a very good initiative for us to work collaboratively with the National Research Foundation. And we partnered with the foundation in 2016. And what we tried to do was to see how we can grow research and in a way that we develop to sustainable development within partner countries, with South Africa being a very critical partner of the UK government. And we attracted 2 research chairs in 2016. And these research chairs are based at a South African university and a UK university, with the aim of growing capacity within the South African university and growing the quality of masters and PhD students that we have.
Nelson, Sam mentioned the word collaborative, and one thing that comes to mind is the fact that you get the sense that these are equitable, mutually beneficial partnerships. So let's build on that in terms of how all of this works in the NRF coming in here.
In 2014, September around, the MOU was, the Memorandum of Understanding was concluded to sort of build on the existing relationship to build research capacity. And ever since, these 2 entities, the NRF and the British Council, have actually jointly established research chairs in South Africa.
Sam, let me come to you here. I mean, going back to what you said, we were talking about the UK-South Africa bilateral relationship. But now, when we talk about the bilateral research chairs program, what kind of impact have you seen since it was initiated?
We started working on this partnership in 2016. I think it might be early to still see the impact, but there's been a number of outcomes that have come out of the partnership. So there's about, 1 research chairs, which is led by Prof. Deverell, has published over 33 papers. He has contributed to social issues that face South Africa, mostly looking at primary school children, households that depend on social grants, and farm workers, and writing extensively on these and bringing these issues into the public platform, over and above supervising and looking after about 33 postgraduate students. And we have another chair that sits at the University of Johannesburg, which is led by Professor Erika Mbula, which is on transformative sustainable development. We have about 8 PhD students that are being supervised under this particular chair. 5 of them are in South Africa, 2 are in Kenya, and 1 is in the UK. And through this particular program, we're trying to develop new African thinkers who push the boundaries of research and come up with new ways of thinking and drive innovation.
One of the research chairs we've been discussing was awarded to Dr. Stephen Deverell. Dr. Deverell is a development economist at the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex. He is the co-director of the Centre for Social Protection. In 2016, he was appointed as research chair in food security at the University of the Western Cape. It's estimated that 1 in 4 South Africans are food insecure. Let's hear some of Dr. Deverell's insights on this matter.
So the title of my bilateral research chair is Social Protection for Food Security in South Africa. And I set out to investigate a paradox. And the paradox is that South Africa produces more than enough food. It actually exports food most years. And we have an extensive social grant system that provides cash transfers or social grants every month to 12 million children, which is 2/3 of all children, as well as many older persons and people with disabilities and others who are on low incomes. And yet, despite this extensive social grant system, and despite the fact that South Africa is food self-sufficient, we have child stunting, or an indicator of long-term malnutrition, at 25%. 1 in 4 children are stunted. And that has remained the case since the early 1990s. So there's been no change over the last 30 years, despite the expansion of social grants. My research discovered that there are 2 main problems. The first is that the grants are not adequate to meet household needs. So a grant, for example, the child support grant will go to the child in the household. But if the child is living in a household with 2 unemployed adults, of course, the adults will also be using that grant to meet their own needs. So that the grant gets diluted among many users or many people in the household, if you like. It also gets diluted among many users. It doesn't only get spent on food. So, for example, the child support grant is equivalent to about 2/3 of a nutritious food basket for the child, but it gets used not only for the child and not only for food. And so in the end, it's not enough to reduce malnutrition of that child. So the second problem is that the grants don't reach everybody who needs them. There's a big coverage gap, and COVID-19 exposed this coverage gap. It's especially those working in the informal sector, self-employed people, or those working in small enterprises who are not paying into unemployment insurance. And when COVID lockdowns came, they had no income to rely on. They weren't able to work while sitting at home. So these low-income informal workers don't get any kind of income support, and that gap was exposed by COVID, and in fact there's been an interesting response to that, which I would talk about in my next answer. So there are 2 obvious solutions to the inadequacy of the social grants. The first is to raise the payment levels so that grants are adequate to meet the needs of the beneficiary and of the household. And secondly, related to this, the grants should be linked to inflation so that every year, if inflation is 10%, the grants should be automatically increased by 10%. Otherwise, they're losing real value over time. And that has been happening in several years. The bigger question is, how do we fill those coverage gaps? South Africa has a major structural unemployment problem. 40% or more of the adult population is unemployed. It's even higher among youth. And so grants are not enough to fill those gaps. You can't provide full income to people that are sitting at home and can't find work. So how do you cover those gaps? Well, during COVID-19, a special social relief of distress grant was introduced to support people survive during lockdowns. And I was invited to join an expert panel which looked at the appropriateness and feasibility of a system of basic income support for South Africa. This panel reported to the Department of Social Development, and we recommended that the social relief of distress grant should be extended to become a permanent basic income support for those people who are living on low incomes or unemployed and can't find work and don't have access to unemployment insurance. Now, very interestingly, that panel report has effectively been adopted because every year since 2021, the president has announced an extension of the social relief of distress grant even after COVID ended officially. The state of disaster was lifted, and yet in the latest budget speech and the latest State of the Nation address, the president announced that this would be extended for at least 1 more year. So we believe that politically it's become irreversible. Thanks partly to our work, but also to civil society campaigning, basic income support has arrived in South Africa, and that will fill this coverage gap. It will make sure that people in the working age population who don't have enough income will get some kind of income support from the government. And the third area of investment, of course, is not adequate just to give people grants, to expect them to live on handouts from the state. We don't want that as a long-term solution. It's a stopgap measure. It's a second best solution. So what should be happening is more investment in productive inclusion programs that link unemployed persons to jobs, so they can get out of depending on grants and get productively employed. One of the major purposes of setting up these bilateral chairs was for academics such as myself based in the UK to bring my expertise to South Africa and to contribute to capacity building at university level and among researchers. So it's been a great privilege to me to be able to teach and supervise students at the University of the Western Cape, a historically disadvantaged university. So all of my students have been African colored, sometimes from other African countries. And as a result of this, over the last 5 years, several students that I have supervised have graduated, both MA and PhD students, and they are now continuing their studies, or they're working in government, or one's working in the United Nations, in fact. So their careers have taken off thanks to this bilateral research chair and the support that I've been given to do this work. I've also managed to involve my students in research projects, in workshops and conferences that I organized. We have co-authored working papers, conference papers, journal articles, and a book chapter together. I took several students to the UK, to my home institution, the Institute of Development Studies at Sussex University, on exchange visits, and sent them for training courses in the UK. And one of the most interesting things that we did just before COVID happened in 2019, we convened a national conference for graduate students in development studies. And we hosted that at UWC, and that was under this research chair. And the students actually drove that. They wanted this conference to happen, and they asked me to support them in making it happen. And so we did. And that was a great, I would say, tribute to this program and also to UWC's commitment to supporting this initiative. There were several strands of my research that looked at food security issues in South Africa. So, for example, one area that we focused on was the school feeding program. It's called the National School Nutrition Program. So I convened a school feeding forum, which brought in stakeholders from the government, academics from several universities, and civil society from engaged NGOs and so on. And we had several meetings where we discussed issues of concern around the school feeding program, how it could be improved and so on. And we organized the first national workshop on school feeding in South Africa, which actually brought together stakeholders from Namibia and Lesotho as well to bring their experiences. And that was a very successful and a big learning event, I think, for government and civil society and academics, which was one area where we hope to make a difference to the design and implementation of the school feeding program. Secondly, I worked extensively on the issue of food insecurity among farm workers in a marginalized group who are very much exploited, and they often work on let's say not proper contracts. They work on seasonal contracts, or they work as day laborers, so they have no connection to unemployment insurance or any kind of formal social security. And we found that there is a severe problem of seasonal hunger among farm workers. So they tend to work in the summer months during the farming season, and then in the winter months they have no work and they have no access to unemployment insurance, or very little. And so seasonal hunger emerged as a major concern among farm workers. And we raised these issues in publications, but also in policy forums. For example, I organized a national conference on the future of farm workers in South Africa under this bilateral research chair. And we presented the findings about seasonal hunger and other issues to the Minister of Labour, who attended the conference. I've been very fortunate in my chair, the period of my chair at the University of the Western Cape, in that I've had a very supportive team that have made things very easy for me. My home institution is actually in the UK, and so the administration at the University of the Western Cape had to provide additional support to me because I wasn't part of the system here. And my connection is both with the Institute for Social Development at UWC, but also with the Center of Excellence in Food Security, which is hosted by the University of the Western Cape. And this is also an NRF function. So the center and my research chair both are supported by the National Research Foundation. And it's been a remarkable experience. I think we've both benefited from being engaged with each other. I have brought my expertise and knowledge from the UK to the Centre of Excellence and also to the University of the Western Cape. I think they have appreciated my inputs as a researcher, as a teacher and a supervisor, and I've certainly learned a lot from them. And I must say that my career has taken a different direction thanks to this chair, because I've spent half my time in the last 5 years working on this bilateral research chair. It covers half of my time, and the other half I'm still working at IDS at Sussex University in the UK. And together, I think we have both benefited greatly. I've become a professor, a full professor during this period. I was awarded a B1 rating by the National Research Foundation, thanks to my research in South Africa. I was shortlisted for the Newton Prize. None of these things would have happened without this bilateral research chair. When I first heard about this bilateral research chair program between the UK and South Africa, I thought it was a fantastic initiative. It's a real example of the global north reaching out to the global south and trying to build capacity, not in a patronizing or condescending way, but simply recognizing that in the UK we are better resourced, and so we have experience and expertise to bring to South Africa in this case. And I really hope that we've managed to do that in my research chair. And I believe that the support that we received from the Newton Fund, from the British Council, and from the National Research Foundation achieved a synergy. The three agencies working together have managed to achieve more than they could do individually. So working as a research chair has been an enormous privilege to me. And I think that overall, the research chair program has been beneficial to many other research chairs that I have met and interacted with in these 5 years. I do believe that I hope it will continue. I think it's beneficial for both countries and for the individual academics involved. And speaking, I must concede, as an older white male, I do think that there is potential for the chair to bring younger academics, let's say female academics as well, forward to build their capacity and to help bring capacity to South Africa, which will benefit South Africans. So yes, I think it's been a fantastic initiative, very beneficial for all involved, and I hope it continues in the future.
We're celebrating 8 years of the Newton Fund in South Africa. Do you have any comments or queries? Post your messages online here and we'll be in touch with you after this event. We've been talking about the UK-South Africa Bilateral Research Chair Initiative. The Newton Fund also nurtures talent and careers. Let's talk to two beneficiaries to find out how. Lupiwe Mduzana is the acting head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at the Walter Sisulu University. Lupiwe, you're in a very interesting field. I understand you're a specialist in orthotics and prosthetics. So the first thing that's going to come to mind for me is, what exactly does an orthotist and prosthetist do?
A medical orthotist prosthetist is a healthcare professional. They assess and they treat individuals with deformities which might be attributed to illness, trauma, or birth defect, and also amputation for that matter. So they make either an orthotic device, depending on the case, or a prosthetic device.
I mean, this must be creative and yet rewarding work for you at the same time. Let's talk a bit about that.
Oh, yes, it is. Back when I was doing my undergrad, one of my lecturers once said to us, I think I was doing third year, that, you know, the profession of medical orthotics and prosthetics is one of the prestigious professions, and it has got an instant gratification in the humanitarian space, in that, you know, once you make an artificial leg, which is a prosthesis for a person who was seated down, could not walk, once you make that prosthesis for them, and they actually stand up and walk, there's no greater feeling that can surpass that.
On that note then, I want to talk about your PhD. Why is it such important research for you?
So during my time, one of the issues that I experienced, and they bothered me, was that in the country we didn't have a guide or a protocol in terms of prescribing a prosthesis. That then drove me to pursuing this PhD, to say, what I want to pursue, I want to make or develop prosthetic guidelines for South Africa. And I've been on that journey, and hopefully very soon it will yield positive results.
So talk to me about how the Newton Fund helped with that journey and with that work.
So what the Newton Fund did for me is that they actually made my dream to come true. And when I went to the UK, you know, it was a surreal moment for me when I landed in Scotland and I knew I'm actually going to Strathclyde. I wanted to cry. And, you know, for me, when the first day I walked inside the doors of that university, the first thing I saw, and I saw on the poster, in my life, I'd never seen so many people with PhDs in prosthetics and orthotics. Because in South Africa, we don't have any. When I went there, and what amazed me even more was to see the number of females who've got PhDs in prosthetics and orthotics. So I knew that, you know what, this was worthwhile. And I'll forever be grateful for that. And interacting with such caliber of people, I think one can assume where it has taken me in terms of my research and my professional.
So I want to explore it a little bit more, the exposure that you got at Strathclyde University, and also how it benefited you professionally.
In fact, I'm going to write a book, and I'll attribute it to the Newton Fund. Look, professionally, it grew me tenfold, because I think one of the things I need to say was to get the confirmation and the reassurance of what I'm doing, that in actual fact, I'm on the right track. Professionally, I got exposed to so many things. So, you know, the world is moving with technology. We are having 3D printing, artificial intelligence. So also prosthetics has moved, orthotics has moved. So when you compare the technology, the UK technology and the South African technology, we are very much behind. But in terms of the skill in the country, I'm a lecturer myself. We do possess the skill. So the only thing that is missing is the time and probably the resources to be able to attain what they're currently doing.
Nelson, you had a smile on your face as Lupio was telling us the story. And for me, I mean, what I'm hearing here is that when he gets his PhD, it's going to be the first in that field of orthotics and prosthetics in South Africa. Do you want to comment on that from the NRF's perspective about that achievement?
So Lupio's visit to the UK and exposure as much as possible that he got exposed to aligns well with the NRF's Global Knowledge Partnerships program. And also, it also touches on the aspect of impact that the NRF is busy with at the moment, because it's going to really put tremors when he obtains his PhD. It's going to have social and knowledge impact across the country and through the African region. So it's great. It's a really great achievement, I should say.
Yeah, it really is. Sam, I mean, I'm curious here, what kind of criteria do you use when you award a Newton Fund travel grant?
So what we look for is early career researchers who are affiliated to a public university in South Africa, with a focus on particular research topics, one of them being social development, agriculture, so things that would contribute to the economic development of a country. So I think, I mean, just listening to Lipu's story, I think sometimes when you initiate funds like the Newton Fund, in as much as we think it would enhance collaboration and advancement within a country like South Africa and the UK, you can never really completely grasp the extent to which you can impact on people. And I think it's exemplary of what the Newton Fund was able to achieve.
We also have with us Dr. Neo Pule. She is a lecturer in psychology in the Faculty of Humanities at the University of the Free State. Dr. Pule, I want to come to you for this part. I mean, I understand that it's the inner person that fascinates you, and you also have an interest in understanding human behavior. So talk to us about how psychology became an interest for you.
So in my approach, in terms of the work that I do, I use what we call systems thinking to understand human beings from the individual level all the way to, you know, all the different levels that they would be involved in. So the immediate group or their family, where they work, where they go to school, you know, the governments they belong to, the world they belong to, because all those levels end up impacting an individual in terms of the inner process. Yeah.
So you focused your research on student leadership. Mm-hmm. What excites you about this topic?
Sure. Student leaders are very interesting people. Very interesting people. I think we underestimate them. And so for me, as a psychologist, especially interested in development and how people function and how societies form, it was really an interest of mine to understand, one, what is the role that psychology can play in the development of youth for the sake of future leadership. And then secondly, what social innovation could come out of psychology in terms of that, so that as a profession, we could contribute positively to youth and then the future of our country.
You were also awarded a travel grant through the Newton Fund. Talk to me about the kind of impact it had on your research.
Sure. Quite a bit and ongoing, you know, I mean, we're still celebrating it today. One paper that was that went through into production this week is a result of this Newton Fund. The Newton Fund gave me an opportunity to visit the University of the West of England, who are sort of also taking a lead in terms of the social dreaming methodology in the UK. I was then appointed as a visiting scholar at the university for a period of 3 years. At the moment, I have an opportunity to supervise UK PhD students. That's quite prestigious for an early career researcher like myself. So also as a result of the visit, I was invited to be a director of the Center for Social Dreaming. And, you know, so being the first African to be part of that directorship and doing our best to extract knowledge from Africa in terms of how it could contribute or how it has contributed to social dreaming work.
This whole experience, the impact it's had on you. I mean, we heard Lupiwa's story and that was fascinating. Talk to me about the impact.
Sure. I think that I outgrow myself on a daily basis. And I think it's these type of opportunities that take someone on a journey that is very unexpected. The impact is about, you know, building research groups and building capacity in terms of research and alternative methodology for qualitative research or humanities research, you know, before my time. But I mean, every time is the right time, so it's my time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nelson, Dr. Pule's research is in humanities, and what I'm getting here is a sense that the Newton Fund doesn't just benefit those who are in traditional science and technology. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, the NRF and the British Council agreement under the Newton Fund contract does not only focus its allocation of awards on your science, engineering, technology fields only, but it also focuses the allocation of funds to the social sciences and humanities. How the allocation of awards is disaggregated within the NRF programs is such that 80% is allocated to science, engineering, technology disciplines, while the other 20% is allocated towards the social sciences and humanities.
Sam, your thoughts on Dr. Pule's career trajectory? I mean, she's certainly an impressive lady, and I can imagine there are many others out there, but let's focus in on Dr. Pule. Your thoughts on her?
I think as you listen to Dr. Pule speak, you can hear that development is at the heart of what she's doing. And that's a common point with the Newton Fund. Newton Fund is about development and sustainable development at that. And what we sort of learning through science is that, the advancement of humanity is not linear. One requires multidisciplinary collaborations in order to advance science itself, but also to advance humanities.
So on that then, do you get other beneficiaries who you come across perhaps in your day-to-day work who share the kind of impact the Newton Fund has had on them over the years?
We get quite a few. I think, what the Newton Fund and the collaboration between the UK and South Africa through the Newton Fund has been able to do is really unearth the potential that exists within South Africa as a country. And I think the spaces that the fund was able to create have really allowed us to move forward in terms of what we're able to do in our research spaces.
Would you like to collaborate with the Newton Fund? Remember that you can get in touch with us by posting a comment here or after this event by contacting our guest, Sam Rametsi at the British Council. We're getting near the end of celebrating 8 years of the Newton Fund in South Africa. Let's explore some of the practical details involved in getting support from the Newton Fund. Let me stay with you with this one. I mean, there are different kinds of, Newton funds, especially when it comes to grants. Can you give us an outline of the different types of, Newton Fund grants?
So the Newton Fund, we had quite a number of grants. So as we've mentioned previously, we had the Research Chair Initiative grant that we supported. We had the Research Travel Links grant that we made available. But also working with the Department of Higher Education and Training, which is where Lupiwe has benefited. We had the University Staff Development Program that was initiated. So that's some of the grants programs that we worked through. But also with all of these, we worked with partners, with the NRF being a critical partner at that.
The one thing about these types of conversations is it's all about, having an impact on society, as we've been discussing for some time now. What is an overview of the application process for someone who's watching this thinking, I want to be able to at least benefit or I've got something to contribute? How does it work?
Yeah. So the Newton Fund has come to a close, unfortunately, but we are sort of drawing on the learnings from the Newton Fund and thinking, how can we use those to better develop a new way of funding research and development. And the process of application, we very much rely on existing systems within the country. So working with the National Research Foundation, for instance, we collaboratively develop a call to identify individuals that would be able to respond to the kind of I guess, research questions that we would like to have answered in specific development scientific areas that we want to advance.
Lupiwe, let me come to you. For someone who's watching this, other researchers such as yourself, who are looking for words of advice or motivation after having heard your incredible story, what would you say?
My advice is that, such opportunities are rare to come by. And when you look at the application itself, really it's for people who are serious, it's for people who know what they want, and for people who are determined to work. It's not easy to apply because it challenges you. It wants you to really talk to what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to achieve what you are claiming that you're going to achieve.
Nelson, as we get to a point where we wrap up the conversation, where to from here? I mean, from your perspective, what does the future hold for the Newton Fund in South Africa?
The NRF is a principal funding agency of South Africa. And we want to be seen to be doing just that, funding postgraduate early career researchers and also your established researchers. But as things stand, we are actually depleting funds more than we are actually bringing in. So we need to build partnerships. So way forward, the building of partnerships is at the forefront of our mandate as the NRF. And yes, we would like really to see a renewal of our partnerships that we had, and we want to see more partners coming on board.
Sam, my final question to you. I mean, we've spoken about the importance of collaboration, and we've seen the kind of impact the collaboration has had on Lupiwe and as well as Dr. Pule. When we talk about partnerships, let's expand on that. What kind of partnerships are we talking here?
The Newton Fund, through the British Council, was able to create a platform for knowledge sharing, knowledge exchange between the UK and South Africa. And I think through that partnership, a lot of talent has been unearthed and a lot of research has been developed, sustainable research at that. I am very encouraged by the work that we were able to do with the Newton Fund. And I think for our future partnerships, we can learn a lot from this particular fund.
Absolutely. So partnerships, collaboration, that's one of the other words that I picked up. Dr. Pule, gentlemen, thank you so much for this conversation. And I do hope that it is an enlightening one, certainly for the other researchers who are watching this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Partnerships, research and innovation. The Newton Fund develops young minds to transform lives. Many thanks to all my guests for bringing this inspiring initiative to light. And thank you for joining our celebration, 8 years of the Newton Fund in South Africa. We encourage you to contact us and connect, collaborate to find out more.